Hi there. My name is Kim Priestmeyer. I'm the Managing Director for CTAS, which is the Center for Transfer and Adult Students at IU Indianapolis in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I first want to start with just thanking Kale for providing me the opportunity to present today about a topic that I feel really passionate about, and I know many of you do too, which is helping returning students, stop out students, complete their degrees. And I am a leader on this campus who is really the point person for that at our IU Indianapolis campus. And I'm going to share with you today kind of just my real experiences in doing that, both reasons I have for optimism, but also some challenges that have occurred and that continue to occur in a large urban campus that's very complex. So I look forward to having this discussion with you today, and hopefully you can learn something from my experience as you continue to promote your own efforts as someone who's a champion for adult learners who are trying to complete their degrees. So really where I want to start today is just sharing with you a little bit about my journey and how I ended up in this space. You know, we all kind of find our places and spaces in higher education. Some of them we didn't really anticipate as we move through our careers. So I wanted to share with you how I ended up in this space because, as you know, it's a relatively new place to be in higher ed. Some campuses are very focused on it, and other campuses really are not much focused at all on these students. So there's so much new information out there and so much new energy surrounding adult learners. I wanted just to start with telling you a little bit about my journey. So really my first foray into higher education was becoming an adjunct or an associate faculty, as we call them on our campus, at a local community college. I was an experienced teacher, but I was a high school and middle school English teacher for many years and began working as an adjunct instructor at the community college. And I think that's really where I fell in love with higher ed, generally speaking, but also really started noticing that even though this was something I had never thought much about, that many of the students in my classes were not traditional age students. They weren't 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They were older students. Many of them were working. Many of them had children of their own. And this is the first time I really started thinking about what it must be like to be someone who's kind of unencumbered by life and trying to complete a degree. So it also started me on this path of really having empathy for associate faculty, for adjunct faculty, and the work and the place of them in higher ed, and the passion that so many of those who do that work have for adult learners. So I was fortunate enough to be able to move into a full-time faculty position at a small private university in the South. And that institution at that time had 7 or 8 regional campuses across the South and Southeast, and all of them were 100% dedicated to accelerated adult programs. And they were not online, they were physical campuses at that time, because this was really before online started growing. And the campus where I was all of our courses were at night because, of course, these were working adults. And during the day, we had a small staff for student services and admissions. But really, faculty were on campus at night and working exclusively with that adult learner population who really had a lot on their plate. So I was very fortunate to be faculty in that space and really be able to start learning from the faculty perspective about what those students really, what their challenges were and how to connect with them. And that's really where I fell in love with that adult learner population. So after some time in a faculty role, I moved into various leadership positions that again, we're focused on adult learners and then into the online space, which of course, as you know, serves a lot of adult learners. And uh, was able to really impact larger groups of students with working in leadership roles in curriculum, with faculty development. And so I was able to kind of get that full picture of working in the adult learner space. So since that time, I'm currently at IU Indianapolis, and I am the campus point person for credit for prior learning efforts, which I'm going to talk about quite a bit today in relationship to this population. Adult and transfer student services, so all of the resources we have on campus to support those populations. I'm also the lead for our Stop Out enrollment, re-enrollment focus that, as you know, many times is the adult learner, and also our general studies program, which attracts a lot of adults returning to campus to finish their degrees, because we're able to carve out a relatively quick path to completing a degree, which allows them to save time and money. And as you know, that's very important to a lot of our adult learners. So I wanted to just share with you a little bit about how I ended up in that space. I think it's always interesting when I meet others to know about that journey, because sometimes it's kind of a little bit unconventional in higher education. So I wanted to share that with you just to provide some context. So where I'm starting is to tell you about IU Indianapolis and kind of give you a picture of the landscape of IU Indianapolis. You know, every institution is so unique, so different, and brings its own set of challenges and also its own set of benefits as it works through different student populations. But one thing about IU Indianapolis that's really very unique is that we just went through a huge, what we call realignment. If you knew us as IUPUI, we had a long-standing, many decades standing alliance with Purdue University. And in July of 2024, we went through a realignment, and those two institutions split into separate campuses. So you can imagine all of the logistics, not only kind of our physical campus and reassigning services and buildings, but also teach out students. And we had some schools switch campuses. So extremely complex. I'm really here at an exciting time in the IU Indianapolis history, but it obviously has put focuses on that as we've worked through other areas that are very complex. So, you know, as I'm working to advocate for adult learners, to grow that enrollment and to provide services and resources for them, it's really been in the context of this realignment. And so that has obviously consumed a lot of attention on campus. We also have had a lot of leadership and personnel changes. Again, this might sound familiar to you, but we have a brand new chancellor. We just announced a new provost in the last week. And so we've had a lot of top leadership changes, and we've had a lot of just personnel changes even within my own unit. There have been some personnel who were moved to other areas of the institution in the realignment. And so just a lot of change and a lot of unknowns as I have been charged with this effort of serving adult learners. Another thing to know about us is we are a very urban campus, and we are just right in the middle of a lot of employers who are very high profile. So for example, Eli Lilly is right down the street. The NCAA is headquartered in Indianapolis, and we can walk to those offices. So, you know, Indianapolis is a large, vibrant Midwestern city, and really growing its base of employers. And that puts us in such a terrific, unique position that some other campuses might not enjoy. And if when we're talking about adult learners and returning students who want to finish their degrees, there are so many of them right here. We've also had a long-standing partnership with the local community college in the state, and in particular with the very large presence they have in Indianapolis. So we really have relied on that community college to as really our main funnel by which we receive transfer students and are able to serve them well. And again, in terms of proximity, we're very, very close to each other, and we have enjoyed this since the 90s, a very long partnership with that community college that we continue to enjoy, but we know that we always have to take care of that partnership and continue to grow it and make sure that that students are served well by it. So those are just some details about IU Indianapolis, again, just to kind of place us in context as you think about your own institutions. And we certainly have our own set of challenges. And these are some things that I want to be very transparent with my audience about today, because every institution has challenges, and when it looks at different populations, and as someone who cares a lot about growing adult student enrollment and serving them well, these are some of those. Right now we only have about 1,500 students of our 11,000 undergrads this fall who are 25 and older. And I want that number to be much higher. I know that it could be much higher, but right now that's relatively a fairly small amount of small number of students. So getting the focus on adult learners on this campus can sometimes be a little more challenging, because we obviously have a lot of students who are first year students. And so that's really part of my job, is making sure that when I am in places and spaces across campus, that I'm always reminding students of this 1,500 students, but also of the need to grow that number. As I mentioned before, we are a decentralized institution with multiple campuses. So in any organization that has a structure like that, it's a very complex organization, and many of our campuses operate very differently operationally. And so that certainly is a challenge when we're trying to grow adult population on this campus and other campuses, because we just all kind of have our own way of operating in many ways. So that's definitely something to know that is a challenge about our campus. And even though we all hear about these 40 million Americans who have some college but no degree, and even though we all do hear about the enrollment cliff, and most institutions are facing a somewhat similar set of enrollment challenges, our campus enrollment focus is on first year students. And so, that's really part of my task and my role, is to make sure that I'm always advocating for those students, giving them a voice on campus, and also making sure that others on campus know about them and know about a lot of the work that's occurring around these students. So the Center for Transfer and Adult Students, which is the unit in which I work on this campus, it's really not very centrally located. It's not visible. We don't really have an actual center. We have offices, but we don't have this big space that a lot of students walk by. And we're really relatively new on campus. Until we've really only been around since a little bit before COVID. And of course, then there was COVID. And so I really think of the Center for Transfer and Adult Students as having a ton of potential, that and we have a long way to go, and we have plenty of room to grow. So there's lots of ways that I would like to see us be more visible on campus, and really start to put down roots on this campus, so students, staff, faculty alike see us more and know about our efforts. Also, credit for prior learning, which is part of my responsibility on this campus. We do not have a way for students to easily access our credit for prior learning opportunities. There's currently not a way available through the admissions flow for students to kind of raise their hand and say, hey, I have some of that. Would you please consider it? So we right now are having to just kind of be creative on how we let students know about those opportunities. So that's part of what I'm going to talk about more today as well. So those are some of my challenges, and some of them may sound familiar to you as we get started. And I think it's important in higher ed that we have those transparent conversations about the work that we do. And, a lot of it's hard. And sometimes some of it's out of our control. We all have our boundaries and our guidelines. And so that's one thing I really wanted to do today, was to speak transparently about those challenges. However, I am optimistic. I do believe that there's a lot of things working in our favor. And one of those is that Indiana, in February of 24, the state of Indiana, the Higher Ed Commission, released its first ever guidance for institutions about credit for prior learning. That's a huge step. It gets everybody moving in the same direction. It allows me to share that good news across campus, because as you know, once your state is focused on something, that's probably going to affect resources and budgets. And so it was a great time for that to be released, and I'm excited about that. And we have a lot of Hoosiers right here at our back door who are ready, hopefully, to finish their degrees. 2 million, I think that number's even higher. We have plenty of students, and we're in this big city, so there's just a lot of potential. And I really do see a lot of increased interest across campus in creating adult-friendly programs, accelerated programs, more online programs, more online offerings, and adult-focused initiatives like, say, micro-credentials. So I see it. I hear it. I know that there's more attention on this, and schools, staff, faculty are definitely starting to pay more attention, which is exciting. And in this realignment that I spoke of, one great thing that's happening is that we have some software changes on the horizon that are part of the admissions process. And I'm still learning about what those potentials are, but I do know that there's a lot of potential for a portal to be created that would allow for us to customize a place for credit for prior learning that would obviously attract adult learners back to campus. So those are some reasons why I'm optimistic. Definitely want to share those too, that I see good things happening, good conversations happening. So one thing I want to share at this point are just kind of some of my strategies that I'm using to create momentum across campus for adult learners in the context within this kind of framework that we have on our campus right now, which definitely has a much higher first-year student population and a lot of focus on those students. And one way that I've experienced some successes is by engaging faculty through their credit for prior learning projects and creating spaces for them to discuss, share, get excited about. So these are some of the projects that are occurring on our campus right now. One thing I did when I came into my role was I just really wanted to engage with every school who was willing to have a conversation with me about it. And I'm glad to say that 9 schools have engaged. 4 of those schools are having regular check-in meetings with me as they grow their projects, and they are making forward progress every time I meet with them. And so that's just really great news. And as you know, when you're working with faculty are have multiple things on their plates. They're teaching, of course, but they have their research and they have a lot of other projects. And so just getting this time with them and being very strategic about getting that time with them is really something that's worked well for me. In a month or so, I am actually presenting with 2 faculty who have some exciting credit for prior learning projects on the horizon. And so, making those opportunities known to faculty and getting a couple faculty to partner with me on that effort, that's been terrific. We're going to be able to share that widely across campus, and that will really hopefully get some momentum for those types of projects. I hold what I call a monthly CPL check-in. It's really just an open forum. I have about 20 or so faculty and staff who are on the invite list, but I always just share that with anybody I talk to across campus. It's a very open meeting. We just share ideas. Kind of the purpose of it is for faculty to have a space and a place to proudly share the work that they're doing in that credit for prior learning area, but also to create a little bit of that, hey, what are they working on? I kind of like to have a little bit of that going on, and I'd like to be able to share that with my dean. So it kind of creates that momentum and gives a space for that. And that's been, we've had a few meetings so far this fall, and that's been really successful. And I really try to let the group kind of guide where we go. I don't come into that meeting with a set agenda. I might have something I want to share with them, but I really want that to be a place where they're able to share and engage themselves. And I really just can't say enough about just identifying that those faculty champions on your campus who are excited about creating opportunities for adult learners to bring them back to campus, to know about their programs, and to get involved with credit for prior learning. So that is definitely part of my strategy for creating momentum that has worked well. Another thing is engaging across the campus, really in anywhere I can find, to tell you the truth. I talk about adult learners with anybody who will listen. And what I really try to find in those different units and divisions across campus is someone within that unit who shares my passion. And so, a great example, I have someone in the registrar's office who is really partnering with me to work on some of the barriers that were hindering our stop-out students re-enrolling. And we were really able to lift a restriction a couple of weeks ago that was keeping that process streamlined and relatively easy, and she said to me, she was like, I was one of those students. And so I want to be a part of the solution to get them back. And that's just music to my ears as someone who's doing this work. So finding in the different units across campus, those types of partners and relationships who can really make a difference in attracting our adult learners. Also formed this Transfer and Adult Council, which is a group of, there's about 40 people on the invitation list. I typically have 20 or so who are able to attend every month. And it's just a group of faculty and staff, a lot of advisors, people in student affairs, just really across the university who care about transfer and adult students and want to create programs and resources that will attract them. When I came into this position, it was the Transfer Council. And one thing I wanted to do was to add the adult piece into it. And that's worked really well because it's allowed us just to have a fuller, more robust conversation that doesn't leave the adults out of the conversation. Also, we in my unit, Center for Transfer and Adult Students, we have an online referral form that we share very widely across campus, and that allows anybody who talks to an adult student, who talks to a transfer student, it might also be an adult student, to use this electronic form that comes directly to us. So they have a place to send a student. I've had so many staff just in casual conversations, say on a big campus like this, like, I'm so glad, to know that I can send a student to you and I feel like I'm taking better care of them. So we created this referral form just to make that easier for advisors and staff in other units when they meet students who might be struggling to connect or find resources. send them our way. And we want to make that easy. When you just tell like a returning student, we'll go up to the third floor. They don't have a center, but here's their offices. They're probably not going to come and find us. But through this referral form, we know about them. They won't fall off our radar if they're referred by faculty, staff, and we can connect with them in a personal way that way. Also, we've developed a strong collaboration with the Center for Teaching and Learning, which of course is very focused on professional development. We have, for example, an upcoming adult student panel that we're doing in collaboration with the Center for Teaching and Learning, hoping to get lots of faculty engaged that way about these students as they share their stories. And so having a collaboration with them and working closely with that unit has been a big win for us. Also through student affairs. I sit on an inaugural committee that is dedicated to recognizing and serving parenting students more and better. Again, on this campus, that has not been able to develop as much as we would like. So I'm excited about this. We have the right people in place. We have the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs on that. He's very passionate about adult students. So that collaboration has been great. And even at the faculty level, so I'll tell you a little story. That my unit works, we are the advising unit for general studies. We noticed we had a lot of our general studies students who were not completing their degree just because of their math requirement. So we have worked very carefully with the department chair for math. And this fall, we are running a math support course just for repeating students who are missing just this credit to complete their degrees. And these students get one-on-one attention. They have a safe space where they can go and get this one-on-one tutoring in that math class. It's embedded within it, and it's online, so they can have access easily. So these partnerships, even with individual faculty, when we let them know things like this, hey, we've got, I want to say, I think we had like 18 students. This is the only course they needed, and creating this support course to get them across the finish line. So all of those collaborations, that's part of really what I do every day, is just be mindful and sensitive to, like, where can I do this work across the institution to get the attention that these students need. So these collaborations are just really important. Another thing that I've really focused on is giving adult learners a voice on this campus to increase their sense of belonging. That we're all hearing a lot about belonging. I know that my division is really paying a lot of attention to this. And so just working across the campus to give these students a voice, put them in front of faculty and staff in very specific ways. One way that we've done that is we now have a scholarship for our advisory board that we formed for transfer and adult students. We have 7 students who sit on this advisory board, and they really partner with us in every way imaginable. They help us with tabling events. They sit on some student panels when we're talking to faculty and staff. So they're engaging with us in a lot of different ways, and forming this advisory board to just really show the campus that, we've formed this, we have a scholarship associated with it, and we're just very serious with helping these students prosper and giving them a voice. I've told you already a little bit about this adult student panel in collaboration with the Center for Teaching and Learning, creating those very strategic opportunities where faculty can come in and hear from the adult students and students like them who are in their classes. What do they need? How are we serving them well? What have they, what's tripped them up during their experience here? We want to really present their voice. We started this year something called Returners Roundup. We have big plans to scale that, but essentially It was a welcome event just for our returning students so they wouldn't get lost in the shuffle of just the regular orientation. And so we have high hopes of creating a more robust event like this that really welcomes students back to campus, and that's really tailored for the adult student and what they need. And I've spoken about this parenting student task force. You know, many of our adult students are also parents, and that just adds a whole nother layer of challenge as they try to complete their degrees. I really have high hopes that this campus is going to pay more attention to that, and we're really going to be able to have more communication with these students about how we can support them, and just really more deliberate efforts toward that. You know, these are some of the adult student stories that inspire us, and sharing these across campus, I think, is really important as we have these wins, because sometimes these wins feel hard, and you think sometimes you're not making a lot of forward movement, but that's why I think sharing their stories is so important. Is so important. Faculty and staff need to hear these stories, and it's part of my responsibility to make sure that this happens. We worked with a student, Nathan, with the School of Philanthropy, and by sharing his experience as someone who had been in the nonprofit world overseas, spoke multiple languages. When he came back to IU Indianapolis to complete his degree, we were kind of struggling to find a space for him that really tapped into his experience. So we worked with the School of Philanthropy on a credit for prior learning, on awarding credit for prior learning, and they were able to do that in partnership with us. And now they're going to be able to kind of use that as a springboard to offer credit for prior learning to other students like that, where they hadn't had that in place before. Sarah's a student who had a long career as a dental assistant. She's coming back to campus to finish her 4-year degree. We thought, wow, we are going to put Sarah and other students like her on a student panel to talk to faculty and staff. And when we hear stories like that, we want faculty and staff to hear them because they're just so inspiring. Alicia, we made sure that Alicia is on our parenting student task force as a student representative, because we want student voice on those task forces as we work to provide better resources for adult students who are also parenting students. And Alicia's story is really just such a success story. She is now working on her doctorate. She had an amazing journey to finish her bachelor's and then her master's, all while parenting as a single parent, and working full time. So when we find out about those students, we want to make sure that leadership knows those stories, and we're really amplifying them in a public space. And Jennifer's one of our students who's been so positively affected by that math course, that support course I told you about. She's getting through it this semester. We've checked in with her a couple of times, and she just said having that space that was outside of the regular course, that just gave her a place to feel safe, ask questions, not feel like she was the only one who wasn't understanding. Because as you know, a lot of times our adult students can be afraid to ask for help. And so just so inspiring. What we're really hoping is more schools and courses like that that have a high DFW rate across campus, particularly for those repeating students, many of whom are adult learners, that's just going to create a trend on this campus. And so those stories just really inspire us. And I think it's upon people like me on this campus to advocate for those students, to tell those stories, to give them a space. So again, can't say enough about just stepping up into those spaces. Many times I have to kind of say, like, before we move on, can we talk about how this is affecting adult learners, or can we talk about this subject through that lens? You have to be an advocate. You have to boldly speak up when you're in meetings with leadership, with faculty, with staff, just to keep the focus on adult learners, especially if your campus does not really have that singular focus. So that's just such a big part of the job that I do. I look for opportunities to collaborate, to step up and lead in those spaces. I also try to think very strategically about where I am in that conversation, knowing that everybody has a lot on their plate and everyone's being pulled in a lot of different directions, but how can I deliberately and strategically move the needle for these students? Sometimes what that looks like seems a little bit outside of specifically my role, and I have to be willing to do that sometimes to get those wins. And as you know, if you're in this space, disappointment is kind of part of the process. You're not always going to get those wins, but you have to, you just have to keep going, and that's why working with individual students and just sharing those stories, they do keep me motivated for sure. So as I look ahead to the future, these are just some ways that I'm still navigating and looking for ways to promote adult learners on our campus. I really want to get involved in the alumni population. We have not really done much of that as far as adult learners go, but there's so much potential here with employers. And I really want to start collaborating with our alumni office to see how we can start to create those networking opportunities for our adult learners. Also, corporate sponsorships. I was actually contacted a few weeks ago about a corporate sponsor who's very specifically wanting to appeal to that population. So that's something I'm really going to devote some time to in the next few months, is creating a plan for corporate sponsors and getting that out there in the community. My goal is to make Indianapolis, IU Indianapolis, the top destination for returning adults when they want to finish their degrees. And so I just keep that in mind every day. It's a big goal, but how can I keep the momentum going on campus and just experience those small wins as we move toward that, because there's just so much potential out there. So I love to meet people who have a particular interest and passion for these students. I would love for you to reach out to me. There's my email right there. Reach out to me with any questions or comments about the work that we're all doing together here. And again, thank you to Kale to giving me this opportunity, and have a great day.